Welcome, you guys, to the Low Bottom High Rise podcast with me, Moira Casaba, and today we are on the set of the BK show. Bedros Keuilian is in the house.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming to HQ. We've got our half day planned later today, and what a great opportunity to be on your show.
Absolutely.
Big fan right here, big fan.
Likewise, obviously.
Thank you.
So this is going to be super fun, this conversation, live and in person, which is such a treat for me because I don't always get to do that. But let's start here.
Yeah.
If there might be somebody out there that doesn't know who you are, how would you answer that question? Who is Bedros Keuilian?
Yeah. So I always say that I'm the immigrant edge and the American dream. And by that I mean, as an immigrant, we escaped the Soviet Union. I was 6 years old when we came to the United States. So you know the story, but for the sake of your audience, my dad was a member of the Communist Party, not by choice. He was, because if he didn't accept that privilege, he would have been shipped off to Siberia and never to be seen again. And so we're from Armenia. At the time, it was under Soviet Russian control. And my dad decided in 1980, when I was 6 years old, that we're going to escape and come to the United States. And the whole idea there was he hated communism. He didn't want us to be raised in a communist regime. He wanted us to have freedom and opportunity. And he had heard that America is the place for that. And so he saved up enough money to be able to bribe some Soviet council members who allowed us to escape into Italy. From Italy, we went to the American consulate, and 10 days later, we were in the United States legally. And yeah, what's interesting about that, Moira, is when we got to the United States, we didn't have anything other than, I think my dad had something like $150 US, a family of five, $150 US. I was the youngest of the children, 6 years old. We're living in Section 8 housing, food stamps. Like, the living situation was awful. And what he had told us, like the reason we're escaping and leaving our friends, because as a child, I had friends.
Right.
I had a community. And all of a sudden we're escaping, but he drew this beautiful picture.
Yeah.
And then we get here.
Not so beautiful.
Not so beautiful. Yeah. And so I don't speak native language. I don't understand the culture. I'm being bullied and being made fun of. And I was like, why did my dad lie?
Right.
Yeah. But
I can't imagine how much, not even harder, but for your older siblings.
Yeah.
Like, as a 6-year-old, you're a little bit more malleable.
Yes.
Whew,
yeah.
That's tough.
Here's the crazy part. I thought I had it hard until like about a month in, I would hear my brother and sister so when I was 6, my brother was 19, my sister was 21. So I'm the oops baby of the family.
Yeah, same.
Okay, there you go. We have that in common. So my 2 older siblings are within a couple years apart, and then 14 years later, there I am.
Yeah.
And so I would hear them crying at night in their room. They had their own room. I slept on the couch in the living room. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. And then my mom and dad had their own room. And I would hear them crying, and they would argue with my dad every day. We would just want to go back to Armenia. Like, we don't understand this place. They're older. They had friends. They had peers.
Yeah. They had a life.
Yeah, they had a life. And so you're right. I was more malleable. I had more flexibility. Within months, I learned the language, whereas for them, it was more difficult to assimilate. But I got to tell you, those first 2 or 3 years were so humbling. And I believe it built resilience, resourcefulness, and this relentless mindset in me that I've been able to carry into my entrepreneurship career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much. I don't know if I know that we kind of share a brain a little bit. We're around a lot of things. Yeah. But I'd never really drawn the parallel so much until just sitting here right now with I definitely had a radically different childhood, but with my demise into the world of addiction.
Yeah.
And having to crawl out of that and realizing, I mean, it took me 35 years to realize this, but when I finally realized that the grit and resiliency and just the level of, what my definition of hard is so radically different than most people, how that was my edge in entrepreneurship, that was really what became my superpower. It's so similar, and I feel like there's so many people out there that are holding themselves back, right? Because they think they've got this thing, or they've got this issue, or they've got this horrible marriage, or they've got this depression or anxiety, or whatever it is, whatever's keeping them just locked up with shame and guilt and less than, that can actually be the thing.
Yeah.
That can be the reason you succeed.
Yeah,
wildly.
and oftentimes it is. It's when you become aware enough that I just need to reframe this scenario.
Yeah.
Like the suffering, right?
Yeah.
You suffered in your own way. I suffered in my own way. Someone who might have anxiety, depression, shame, whatever, is suffering in their own way. And all we have to do is two things. One, heal.
Yeah.
And then once we've healed, use it as a superpower to serve others.
Right.
And when you do that, that creates, you know this, I don't need to tell you, but for your audience sake, you have not only recovered, but you have then paid it forward to such a massive extent. And there's a higher level of healing that happens when you not only heal yourself, but then go and help others heal, recover, and find themselves. There's a higher level of healing. And I think we're both on that quest now.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, I go, what I do in serving humanity is like the most selfish thing for me.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And you get that because it reminds you of how easily we can slide back.
Yeah. And you just, for everybody else listening, it's like there's, I've heard this expression, like each one, teach one. Like you walk through it, and our job in the world, I feel like all of us, is to just kind of turn around and extend your arm and help that next person up, over the fence, And we just stay so stuck. So your shirt literally says flip the switch. And that's what we're talking about, right? It's like, it's sitting down. Sometimes it's as silly as putting pen to paper and saying, let me rewrite this story, right? Like, a total random story, but I can remember the first Christmas I was without my dad. And I know you just went through this. First Christmas I was without my dad was also the first Christmas I had a baby.
Oof.
And it was the first time I wasn't in my parents' home, because we had always gone home. I'd always been surrounded, youngest of 6 kids, this huge family. And I just remember thinking I had the choice to feel the pain and the misery of what it was to be without my family, to be all alone, to be without my dad. And, I could ride that story into just depression, or I could choose to see it as all those beautiful years, all those memories, all those times I got my dad. And it was the biggest, like, I was the happiest that Christmas because I got to be home with my husband, and that was a new experience. I got to be home with my baby. Like, I just saw these two paths, and I was like, oh, I could look at it this way, or I could look at it this way. I'm going to choose this way. But we get that choice every freaking day.
Every day. So much of it is that reframe.
Yeah.
Because life comes to us with suffering, does it not? I mean, it's just how it is. Like, things are going to go wrong. We all know that if we have parents, well, they're probably going to die. And if we have siblings, and someone's going to get injured or whatever. And if we're married, we're going to have issues in our marriage. It's just the human condition is... I think it was Joseph Campbell who said, the human condition is suffering with brief moments of bliss and happiness. And I think that's by design. When you think about the acorn, and it has to become this giant oak tree, the acorn has to first, like when it falls off a tree, it has to find its way into the dirt. So who knows what happens? It gets trampled by animals, right? To find its way into the dirt. And then it has to go through fires and droughts and excessive rain and freezing cold and this absurd heat. And all that adversity will eventually turn that tiny little acorn into this beautiful, massive oak tree. It takes a lot of suffering for it to become this majestic thing. That is us. That is the forging of the human spirit. I mean, we all work out, and if you don't work out, you should. If you go into the gym, or you're on the road running or jogging, doing Pilates, whatever it is you're doing, you're testing your body, your muscles against resistance. Well, isn't it not fair to ask for emotional and mental resistance as well, so we become more resilient in that way? And so when we're able to reframe and go, okay, this isn't happening, we've all heard this, to me, but it's happening for me. What's the gift in this?
Right.
Like you said, the path.
Yeah.
I could look at it as I'm without, or I can look at it as what a gift. I've now got my own babies. I've got my husband. I can start a new tradition. This could be carried on to their families, etc. And when we are able to reframe, what I say, turning chicken shit into chicken salad.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of chicken shit that gets served up to us.
Yeah.
And the more you strive for greatness as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as someone who's healing, the more chicken shit you're going to deal with. How much of it can you turn into chicken salad?
Right.
And if you can, you're going to be a great shining example of humanity.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's, I feel like we all, at least our audiences, strive for growth. Like, that's what we're here for, like, how do I grow? How do I scale my business? How do I, get healthier in the gym? All these things. You can't get any of that without pain.
Right.
So you have to embrace the pain. And I think it's one thing to talk about this reframe, this rewriting the story, this flipping the switch. But to me, like, I want people to understand that it literally isn't just so you feel better, right?
Right.
It dictates your success. I can see people that I coach that, like, literally can't shake, like, they'll have the same situation, two women, same exact situation, and one of them will see opportunity and seize it and build something from it when the other one's complaining about the same freaking thing. And I'm like, what? Like, it's not just so you feel good. It's what grows from that, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And we often forget that adversity shows a person who their highest self is. And if they've never dealt with adversity, they've always lived a life of comfort, of convenience, what I call being bubble wrapped for too long in life by maybe mom, dad, society, humanity, whatever, your spouse. At some point, you're going to have to feel some adversity. And if you haven't met your higher self, because it's the first time you're experiencing adversity, you're just going to see this as like, man, everything's going wrong.
Right.
Where someone who has dealt with hardship and adversity and has conditioned themselves to be able to reframe, rewrite, they go, there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity there. I remember, for example, the housing market crashed in 2008. And when the housing market crashed, I had previously in my personal training gyms, doing one-on-one personal training. Later, I sold those gyms before 2008, and I became a business coach for personal trainers at the time who had personal training gyms that did one-on-one personal training. And one-on-one personal training is not cheap. It's expensive, $600 to $1,000 a month per person. And so when the housing market crashed, these personal trainers that had these gyms ended up, most of them shutting down their gyms because they lost their clients who couldn't afford $600 to $1,000 a month. And I started to realize that I'm losing coaching clients, and if this continues, I might find myself on my mom's couch with my family, with my new wife and kids, right? And I don't want that. So as that 2008 housing market crashed, I was like, okay, there's got to be opportunity here somewhere. Like, I get it, it's disaster. The news was telling us, like, we're approaching 12% unemployment rate. People are out of jobs. No one's got any money. The banks are going solvent. Like, oh my gosh, it's the end of everything. I go, well, surely there's got to be someone making money somewhere. There's got to be opportunity. What do people want? Well, they still want fitness. They just can't afford it at a higher price point. And so if they want fitness by a personal trainer, maybe I can take those outdoor boot camps that are happening in parks and bring them indoors. Add equipment, create a process, which we ultimately call the 4-station rotation, and in 30 minutes, can one coach, one trainer, train 25 to 30 clients at a time, where we only charge $150 a month, right? And $150 a month makes it a lot more affordable and convenient for people to do this. Now we have nearly 600 locations worldwide, and that was literally the precipice of Fit Body Bootcamp. And so
hundreds of millions of dollars this company that idea turned into.
Exactly, but. Or I could have said, well, everyone's losing money and I'm losing money, so we just have to grin and bear it, tighten the belt, go live on my mom's couch. Complain like the rest of the world. Yeah, talk my wife. And for a brief moment, that idea ran through my head, like, okay, I can talk my wife into, hey, we have to live with my parents for a couple years maybe, I'm like, wait a minute, dude. There's opportunity here somewhere. You just have to seize it.
And talk about opportunity. I mean, when we're asking ourselves the right questions, like, some people are making money somehow. There's an opportunity here. I'm just not seeing it. when you ask yourself, we've all heard it, better questions, you get better answers. But when you're stuck in we're talking about neuroscience here. Like I love brain science. And we're talking about, getting stuck in these negative loops that we've had our whole life, that we literally, you can't see the opportunity. The answers won't come. Like, it's never going to come to you when you're locked in over here. But the second you start to say, maybe there's a gift here, maybe there's an opportunity here, you're going to get like downloads for a multi-million-dollar company that you wouldn't have had if the problem didn't exist.
Being open to the opportunity is so important. I've heard Tony Robbins say this once. He said, change is instant, right? Change is instant. And this is why I kind of came up with the flip the switch concept. Like, we can flip the switch immediately.
Yeah.
We may suffer with the idea of change. And the example that I always tell people is like this battered woman who's in a shitty relationship. And she's been in it for a decade, and she knows it's not a healthy relationship. There's verbal abuse, there's physical abuse, there's emotional abuse, and she endures it all for a decade. But then something happens where that shitty husband does something to the child, maybe slaps the child, hurts the child, and now that woman's had enough. Like, there's a moment. Yeah. And so really, there is a flipping of the switch. It's like, yes, change can take place in an instant. You just suffered for 10 years before you did that. The decision is made in an instant. And if we can realize that, okay, there's an opportunity here. One, be open to it. And then the universe, God, source, whoever your higher power is, will bestow that information to you, will make it available if, one, you're open to it. And two, you have to realize, you have to strike when the iron is hot. Like, you have to be open to taking that leap of faith. Everyone wants is this guaranteed? Right. Is this going to work out for sure?
That doesn't work very well in entrepreneurship.
No, it doesn't work well in employment. I mean, one company gobbles up the other company, and tomorrow you get a pink slip. People think that, I work for IBM or whatever, some big company, and I have a safe and secure job. Yeah, until it gets outsourced or gobbled up, and your position is redundant, and so here's your pink slip, goodbye. Yeah. There is no guarantee, so I'd rather bet on myself than hope that someone's going to feed me.
Yes.
Right?
I think what we're getting to is action. Yeah. Right? It's the missing link, I feel like, for so many people. We both have podcasts, we both coach people, we talk to audience from stages. And so many people consume, right? We're consuming so much freaking information, but we're not doing anything. Right. And I'm like, that's 99% of the problem. Yeah. Because that change you're talking about that happens in an instant, yes, it's a decision, but it's a decision. A decision is, I believe, when you take immediate action. Correct. To do something to change the situation.
I agree with that.
So can you talk to me about action?
So here's what I know about action, and I'll tell you a great story. When I owned my personal training gyms back in the day, they were called Premier Results. Later, I sold those, got into business coaching for gym owners, and then the housing market crashed, and I created Fit Body Bootcamp, our franchise. But my gyms were called Premier Results, and they were all one-on-one personal training. The model was like this: we had 10 to 12 personal trainers that worked at each location. We had 2 sales managers. So Moira comes in, she gets a free personal training session based on the strength of that personal training session and a nutrition consultation. You either buy 6 months or a year of personal training, and then you're handed off to a personal trainer to give you the results that you want. I had this at one of my locations, the Kearney Mesa location in San Diego, I had this very enthusiastic young man who was enthusiastic, polished, had read every sales book out there: Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins. And then I had this other young woman who was a little shy, maybe introverted, didn't quite have the confidence. However, she was one of those people that always just took action. As soon as she would see an opportunity, she would take action, and then it's almost like kind of build the parachute on the way down, right? And so this young man who was enthusiastic, on paper, he had everything to become a great salesperson, but he was always trying to perfect his pitch, his offer, his objection conquering, rapport building, all these things. And so he was always almost like stuck at the starting line. Yeah. His numbers were lackluster, and he was always on the fence of getting fired. And then this young woman, Michelle, we taught her the presentation, We taught her how to overcome the objections. I told her that you've got to get your first 10 or 15 ugly presentations out of your system. There's no way about it. You have to do it, and you might lose a sale, but you got to get these ugly ones out of your system. And she was just one of those people who was very coachable.
Yes.
And it helps to be coachable, right? Whereas the other guy wanted perfection. I created this term, leaning into imperfect action because of her. She would always take imperfect action, while this young man would always look for a perfect script, perfect objection conquer, perfect ability to build rapport. Ultimately, we ended up parting ways with him. She got promoted to my regional manager.
Wow.
Because, and you know, again, he was enthusiastic, over the top. She was very low-key, humble.
Yeah.
Maybe even lacked a little confidence, but got the job done because she was coachable and leaned into imperfect action. She goes, okay, if I have to get the 10 or 15 ugly ones out, I might as well do it sooner than later. I've always said that if I have to eat shit sandwiches, I want to get really good at eating shit sandwiches so I can be done with them and then see the opportunity.
And that's a different mindset, because I feel the same way. And people really don't understand the concept of, like, you know, it's that eat that frog, or, you know, get done what you don't want to do first thing in the morning. It's like, I'm wired that way. And I think because I don't allow myself to think it's an option, right? Like, it's not an option to not do the thing that sucks. It's not an option to not do the thing that's uncomfortable or that I hate doing. There's always going to be a piece of every business that you hate. You got to just do it first, right? And so I'm like you. I'm like, I'm going to get this done as quick as humanly possible so that I can do the things that I love. I can remember when I started in network marketing, they wanted you to talk to 3 new people a day, which is, you know, reasonable.
Sure.
But I freaking hated it. So I finally was like, wait a second. That's this many people a month. And I calculated it up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to talk to 25 people the first Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the first week, so I can be done in the first 4 days, because I don't want to be miserable every single day. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this part that feels like uncomfortable. But I got super freaking good, super freaking fast.
Repetition. Compounded.
And that's where I realized you get good at having conversations by having conversations. You get good at social media by doing social media crappy. Like, you got to do everything bad before you ever get good. And again, it's imperfect action, because if we're always looking for perfection, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen at the starting blocks. Like, you're going to become a better runner, a better shot putter, a better entrepreneur, a better everything when you are taking that imperfect action and in the process seeing opportunities for perfection. But I think our brain is wired to go, they're going to laugh at me. If I come out the gates imperfect. Some people might.
And they might.
You got to be okay with that too.
Look, this is the most successful I've ever been in entrepreneurship. I own multiple companies. You know, we do $200 million a year in sales across all my companies, and I have more YouTube channels that are not dedicated, the channels aren't dedicated, but they've made videos dedicated to hating on me, hating on the project, hating on the Squire program, hating on the way that I post my social media and that I'm so blunt and brutally honest. Like, who is he to, and in fact, as an immigrant, I say the word critic, but I was adding the letter T to it, so I would say critic. And there was a whole YouTube video dedicated on me about how I can't even speak English well. Yes. How dare he try and coach and mentor people when he can't even spell critic well. And so I say that because if I gave 2 shits about what people thought of me, which there was a time I did. That's when I was unsuccessful. That's when I was plagued with anxiety, and I was depressed because I had no sense of purpose. And while I was looking for a sense of purpose, I was afraid to put myself out there. And when I finally did put myself out there imperfectly for years, and then consistently molded myself to the most perfect version that I can be, I've got the most success in life, but I also have the most hate videos and critical videos out there. And then I realized, someone once told me, because I was kind of complaining about it, if you want to know the truth. I was complaining to a mentor of mine, Jim Franco, and I said, you know, this sucks, man, that I've been doing this for so long now. I've got a proven track record, and there's still people who doubt me. They laugh at me. They make fun of me. He goes, well, what makes you think you're better than Jesus? I was like, whoa, I don't think I'm better than Jesus. He goes, well, there's blogs and YouTube channels dedicated to hating Jesus, Gandhi, and Mother Teresa. And he goes, arguably, they did more for the world than anyone else. Do you think you're above them? No, I don't, sir. okay, then carry on. And that was such a reality check for me.
That is such a reality check, even more so than somebody that's big in the world of personal growth or something.
Right.
Just saying like, hey, look at these big wigs. The more successful you get, the more hate you're going to take on. But even the people that have truly been the ones that have served
absolute,
the world.
Like blessings to the world. And they've got, like, again, there's people out there who are just going to hate because they don't like something about you. I'll take that because it also comes with massive impact and income versus trying to be perfect and really ultimately being broke and anxious and depressed.
Right. Let me ask you this, because I know that you reach and work with a lot of men, but you also obviously work with women. What do you see the difference between kind of your male audience and your female audience as entrepreneurs? What do you see there?
So it's funny because my male audience, I have 70% male audience across my social media platforms. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, 70% male, about 30% female. My coaching clients are 50-50.
Really?
Yeah, my coaching clients. And in fact, last month, not December, November, so 2 months ago, I had 6 female coaching clients in a row doing half days.
Wow.
And Joan brought to my attention, she's like, you just had 6 female coaching clients all back to back, and that's not even all of them. I was like, holy crap. And what I realized the difference between male and female entrepreneurs are that men are, it's almost factory installed in us to drive forward, to see what's around the bend, to go out and conquer. Female entrepreneurs, and the ones I work with are I always say they're alpha female entrepreneurs. You guys are natural leaders. You guys have purpose and passion, factory installed, but there's also motherhood, right? And so I see my female entrepreneur coaching clients kind of struggling with that. Like, how do I find that balance? And whereas men don't have to do that. Let's just face it. Like when my
What did you say? I got to ask you this. We're just going to say it on air.
Sure.
When you came to my mastermind weekend, there was something you said, men are programmed to something, something, and something.
Oh. Was it kill, fuck, and conquer?
Yes, that's what it was.
Yes. Men
my husband was in the background. He was like, that's true.
Yeah. It is, men are programmed to kill, fuck, and conquer. And it's just in our DNA, right? And then women are, I think, factory installed to nurture and to take care of. However, that also means I want to impact, like, how can a woman not be purpose driven? In fact, I believe women have factory installed purpose, whereas men have to go find their purpose. And I'll prove that point this way. Think about this. When I imagine before having your babies, before having kids, you and your husband talked about, man, I can't wait to have kids. He probably thought legacy, because that's how men think, like legacy, kids. You probably thought like, oh my God, my babies, I'm gonna take such good care of them, I'm gonna dress them, I'm gonna look after them, and if they're sick, I'm gonna help them out. Like, there is this factory installed purpose because the babies are born from moms, and it's just factory installed, whereas we just get to kind of visit our babies and then go back to work, kill, fucking conquer, and then come back, right? And so your people are like, what kind of guest is this guy? And so men have to go out there and literally develop and find our purpose, whereas women have factory installed purpose in kids. And so knowing that, well, why can't a woman have other desires as well? Like, I want to create a company, I want to serve humanity, I want to solve problems in exchange for money, as in create a business and empire. But the guilt that women carry because they have to find that balance between, well, I'm mom, I'm a wife, I got to take care of the home. Well, as it turns out, you can actually do both, and you don't have to carry that guilt, because you can make enough money to have a housekeeper that can do the laundry and the food and this, that, and the other. And as a mom, let's face it, your kids probably don't want to hang out with you 24/7.
No.
They want the quality time. They don't want the mom who's going to be on her phone around the kids. They want the mom who's going to be, just like they don't want the dad. I remember Chloe, my daughter, I was talking to her as I'm on my phone, and then she grabbed my cheeks and turned it towards her head. And I realized, I'm an asshole. I need to put this phone down. She doesn't want all of my time, but the time that she has, she wants that attention. Ever since I did that, and I did it with Andrew and Chloe, our relationship improved, because I'm always thinking in my head, I'm always processing, but I realized I have a finite amount of time with these kids. 18, 19, they're gone, right? And so anyways, as a mom, I think you guys have that additional struggle, but if you can let go of that guilt, because guilt, by the way, is the most useless, wasted feeling ever.
Yeah.
Serves us in no way.
Well, and this is like what I'm so freaking passionate about. And it goes back to where we started, because if you rewrite that story, right? And it's my story, but your stories become your beliefs, your convictions.
Yeah.
Because of my experience, right? Like I saw myself become 10 million times the mother that I never would have been to my kids because I pursued my dream.
Right, because if you're not satisfied, if you don't feel purpose-driven,
version of myself.
Exactly, and that piece is important. And that's what when people poo-poo on that. Well, how is she a good mom then?
Yeah.
Well, what about the mom who's at home all day long, but
bitching, complaining, still on their phone? They're just comparing themselves on social media all day versus working. Watching
soap opera all day, or like you said, screen sucking all day, and not necessarily taking the best care of their kids because they're fully distracted and don't feel purpose-driven. Right. If you don't mind me asking, for your audience, how old are you?
I always think I'm in my 30s still, but I'm 46.
46?
Yeah.
You look amazing for 36.
Thank you.
There's women who are 26 that would probably give up a leg to have your physique, to have your mindset, to know how to eat, to maintain what you have. Well, all of that transfers to your kids.
Yeah.
So do I want to be the entrepreneur mom who's a walking, talking example of like, hey, you could be fit at 46, 56, 66 and beyond, and here's how you eat, and here's how you carry yourself in terms of energy, a positive mental attitude? Or do I want to be the stay-at-home mom who's upset and frumpy and doesn't, gives them bowls of cereal and just, puts them on a fast track to diabetes? I'll take mom number one, please. Yeah. Thank you. Like that's just common sense. But people are so hung up on tradition, which we're not in the horse and buggy days anymore. I don't have to go kill a brontosaurus and bring it in for you to cook it up. Right. Like I could just actually go to the grocery store, buy meat, find exactly what kind of ingredients I want, and we can make food together. It's a new world, but people think old style. Yeah, and it can become, and every marriage is radically different, right? Yeah. Radically different, and they're definitely, I always say, you got to renegotiate the contract sometimes. Like when I started going all in on my business and building my empire, and then all of a sudden I was traveling more, a lot of times I work with women entrepreneurs who are bitching because their husband's bitching. And I'm like, whoa. You have renegotiated the contract, but have you done it with him? Right? Like he bought into this thinking you're going to be staying at home, you're going to have dinner ready every night. Like if all of a sudden you are working 30, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, like you guys have to sit down, and it's an ever evolving process. That tricky balance, and communication is so important, but you can arrive at this place that there were times in my marriage I never thought I'd be here. Times where my husband was like so not happy with the amount that I was working. Sure. But we've come to this place where we appreciate each other's roles so much that it has strengthened our marriage, where it felt like it was going to break it at one point. Yeah. Which goes back to resistance, right? In the gym, on the road, when you're running, you're putting your body through resistance, your muscles and your physiology improve and get better. When we have emotional, mental resistance, when we go through hardship and we don't just ignore it and bury our head in the sand, but actually deal with it, solve through the problems of life, we build emotional and mental resilience. Well, guess what? In a relationship, there is relational resilience. And we need to get to that point of, oh my gosh, all right, we are testing the strength of this relationship. We are renegotiating the contract. And the process of renegotiating is one party or the other feeling threatened. Because often, and I love serving men. Look, I feel I'm called to serve men where social media is concerned, especially in a few of my programs like the Squire program and the Project. However, I also, as I've been coaching women now in terms of entrepreneurship for the last 15 years, the one thing I hear over and over again is these women start to build more confidence and build their bank account. Some of their husbands, not all, but some of their husbands will feel threatened by it. For sure. It is a feeling of inadequacy on behalf of the husband. I don't know why that is, but it's that way. And I think if they had a communication, a renegotiation of the contract, and actually put everything out there, like, hey, what are you really feeling? Right. Is it the fact that I'm working 30, 40 hours a week on the business, even though the kids are doing great, we've got a housekeeper, like everything's squared away? Or is there any kind of threat do you feel?
Right.
Like, I'm not going anywhere. I still love you.
Yeah.
And I'm adding to the pot.
Right. And I can remember so many times just having to remind Brian, like, everything I'm doing over here is for us. Like, it's for our future. It's for our kids. It's for our retirement. It's for, like, I'm not over here pulling away from you. It might feel like that, but like, that's not the intention.
Yeah. And listen, who I met in terms of my wife and who she is today, two different people.
Sure.
I love that.
Yeah.
Who she met and who I am today, two very different people.
Yeah.
If you were still the same, that's scary. Like, what happened to growth?
Yeah, real scary.
I always tell people, I say marriage will help you develop faster because you're no longer selfish. You have to become selfless. And then having children.
Yes.
Like, I really believe I became an adult when I had kids.
Yeah.
Because I remember thinking when I got married, I'm like, hey, I'm married. We don't have kids. We're going to sleep in.
Yeah.
Or here's what my day's going to look like tomorrow. You know this, when you have kids, you think you're going to sleep in. 2 in the morning, one of the kids is having a blowout from both ends.
Right.
And my wife sleeps like with the dead. She's a deep sleeper, bless her heart. And so I'm the one up. I was the one up at 2 in the morning. And I remember one day, Chloe, she was probably 1.5, 2 years old, and her stomach was obviously upset. She was having a blowout from both ends. And I'm trying to wake up, also comfort her, also clean the sheets with one hand. And I realize I'm doing adult stuff finally.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an adult where I say, fuck my sleep.
Right.
I have to comfort this little baby.
Yeah.
I have to show her love. I have to clean her up, clean her sheets, tuck her back into bed. And tomorrow, my appointments don't change.
Right.
No one's going to go, oh, I'm so sorry, Bedros. You can't negotiate this $2 million deal because you're tired.
Right.
Like, that is true adulthood.
Yes.
And I don't know. For me, it was a really special thing becoming a father, and I think more fathers need to embrace that, like more men, because men still want to become like, hey, as long as I do, again, I kill, fucking conquer, I'm doing my part. In other words, the modern day version of that is, as long as I provide for the family and have a roof over the head and make sure they're safe and secure. Well, listen, your wife might be able to help with that, because there's a whole audience of women who really want what she's got. Right. Like, why not have her get on board with it? But it takes a high level of confidence, and resistance in a marriage will make that marriage better, just like emotional, mental resistance or resistance in the gym makes our bodies and mindsets better. Yeah, for sure. I have no idea where we're at time-wise, but before... I think we're 25, 35 minutes in. Oh, that's it? Or I don't know. Okay. There's a little box there. I can't really tell. We can't see what time it is. 37. All right, good. But what I want to touch on is something that you and I both feel super passionate about. And it's the reason I'm here today. Yeah. I love the way that you can really explain investing in your business, and as I was making the drive here this morning, I was thinking about all these things. Like, I was thinking about, when I first started my Pilates business, like I would make a little bit of money and I would buy a piece of equipment, and then I'd make a little bit more money and I'd buy another piece of equipment. And like, I slowly got to this point where I had maybe $50,000 worth of Pilates equipment, so I could teach a lot of people at the same time. So it was always kind of investing to scale. If I hadn't done that in my Pilates business, it would have just been a one-on-one, boots on the ground. That's the only time I'm getting paid. Trade time for dollars. Yeah. And so I feel like I was kind of born into the world with an entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah. I was buying literally penny candy from the canteen at the hospital where my mom worked. And then I would mark it up. Brilliant. And I can remember like the Butterfingers, like I can remember displaying it all for the neighborhood and making a killing because of, investing my time and energy and my dollars. Yeah. To then mark it up and make a profit. Yeah. So I've always been wired that way. And I believe wholeheartedly the bigger you invest, and certainly don't be too quick. Like, you can make mistakes. Yeah. We probably both invested also hundreds of thousands of dollars where we're like, shit, that was a mistake. Yep. So that's a risk. But for an entrepreneur, that also comes in lessons. Like, 100%. I believe lessons come from learning from others. Lessons come from losing money for an entrepreneur. Yes. So let's talk about that, because one of my personal favorite stories is the experience I had when
I met you and I made the decision to invest.
Yeah.
So I want to share that really quickly because we were at an event where we were both speaking in Dallas.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
And I'm in the back of the room just listening, getting ready to speak after you or before you or something. And I heard somebody say something. And I always say to my audience, listen to the whisper. I heard somebody say something. And it was almost like I looked up real quick and I was like, well, maybe I should hire him. And it was like a completely random thought out of nowhere. Wasn't thinking about hiring anybody. Didn't have, any thoughts around it. Out of nowhere. And then I was like, I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to grab him on the break and just have a conversation.
Yeah.
So, taking action, just like we're talking about action, action, action. So we had a real quick conversation. And then I was like, I'm going to hire him. And then I was like, pardon my language, what the fuck am I thinking? It's $100,000,
Yeah. Yeah.
But went home, talked to my husband about it. And so I'm sharing that because there was action and decision, which we talked about in the beginning of this episode. But what happened, I didn't expect. And I usually know my own mental, what's going to kind of happen mentally, emotionally. It's what I do and it's what I teach. But when I wired that money, I had been really stuck for almost 2 years. And what am I doing next? What am I supposed to do for the world? Is it a course? Is it a program? Is it coaching? I'd been literally trying to figure it out for 2 years. And as soon as I wired that money, I felt like my brain went into this hyper mode that I had never tapped in my lifetime. And I remember walking into my office and just started scribbling things down. Everything got so freaking clear. I knew what I wanted. I knew what it looked like. I knew where I was going. I knew how it was going to happen. I also had 10 million questions that hopefully you were going to be able to answer.
Yep.
But I walked into this office 2 weeks later and I said, I've literally already gotten $100,000 worth.
I remember that.
And you're like, what?
Yeah, I remember that.
Because of who I became.
Bingo.
When I made that decision.
Bingo. It's, again, goes back to flipping that switch, and change does happen in an instant. Because saying that, hey, I would invest $100,000 in myself versus actually investing $100,000 in yourself, you become a very different person. There's almost like it's a new level opens up immediately. Like Moira 2.0 just came to life
100%.
immediately. And I heard this saying many years ago. I don't know who it was. I think maybe Dan Kennedy. He said, the more they pay, the more they pay attention. And you begin to pay attention to your gut, to your inner voice, to your calling, to your purpose, to your higher self. And that financial commitment opens that up. Now, yes, I charge $100,000 for a year of coaching, and there's very specific types of clients that I'm seeking out. You're it. Like, I can take all 49 of you. I've got 49 Domination Year coaching clients, line you all up, male and female, different ages, and you're like, oh my God, we're all cut from the same cloth. Type A, high speed, tightly wound, purpose driven. And that's who I am. Type A, high speed, tightly wound, purpose driven. And people go, well, isn't that like a negative, like tightly wound? No, I have absolute control in my life. I like being tightly wound. I'm not going around having a heart attack, but I like having structure and control and discipline and organization in my life. I don't want to haphazardly go figure things out. I want deliberate, decisive action in my life. Like, I'm that person, and we attract the type of people that we are. And so when you pay, a new level opens up. When you pay attention. And I can't tell you how many clients have told me that, man, when I wired you that money, when that money left my bank account, I immediately got more clear on things. Yes, I come to you with questions. Yes, I need a game plan, but I knew my outcome. Because what do I ask during the half day? I'm like, all right, Moira, when you leave here today, what does a win look like? You're driving off, leaving HQ, saying, man, this was a win because what? And then you tell me, and then we go, okay, that's what a win looks like. We're going to back into that over the next 4 or 5 hours. And so, and look, it's not about paying $100,000 to someone watching or listening to this. That could be $5,000. It could be $15,000. It could be a mastermind. It could be a course. It could be a whatever. It is having the faith to invest in yourself instead of being a spectator and sitting in the bleachers and watching everyone else playing the game that you want to play, that you know you might be good at, and will give you a sense of significance and satisfaction.
And I think a couple things too. I do believe that the harder it is, like the more you stretch yourself in that financial investment, the more you're going to automatically get, because you're like, well, crap, I can't just, if you were $5,000 for me, I probably wouldn't have listened to a damn thing you said. You know what I mean? Because it wouldn't have meant anything to me. That's not a stretch for you. Right. Yep. So it's like you do want to stretch yourself. And I think that's so important. And I was reading the book recently, Who Not How. Have you read that yet?
Great book.
Oh, so good. And I think that's it. It's like everyone's like, well, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? It's like you got to hire the people that are going to unlock the things that I don't have this knowledge. Right. I don't know how to do this. Like, it's the who's in my life that are going to get me from here to here. Yeah. I'm a workaholic. I can't do anymore. I can't do anymore myself.
Yeah, my bandwidth is full.
Right. Yeah. So I gotta bring in the who's that are gonna go, no, this is how you do it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that. So. But
here's something else I've also figured out, and let's just call a spade, and I'm always brutally honest. So the people who have the means, again, whether it's if $10,000 for them feels like $100,000 for you, correct? Because it does have to feel a bit of a gut punch, like, oh shit, did I just do that? Like when people tell me I'll do it when I can comfortably do it. Yeah. Like that's not the time to do it.
That's not the time to do it.
Like you said, you have to stretch yourself. It has to be uncomfortable. So you go, oh shit, I'm going to work my nuts off to gain all that back within the first 90 days. And then everything on top of that is gravy. Yeah. Right. And so, but what I figured out is the people who don't invest in themselves and who may have the money or the means, but don't invest in themselves, it's not because I'm not proven or you're not proven, because now you go to our websites and you see a stack of testimonials from coaching clients who are New York Times bestsellers to pro athletes to one of my clients is a multi-billionaire. What they don't believe in is not you or me, the coach. They don't believe in themselves. And that's something that has to come internal first. Like the reason you perked up in Dallas and you're like, maybe I need to invest in this, guys. You've stacked enough wins over a period of time to show undeniable evidence to yourself and people around you that I say what I'm going to do and then I do it. Yeah. That ability to follow through and stack wins builds a high level of confidence, and you know that when I make this investment, yes, it's a stretch, but I will unlock a new version of myself and find a way to make that money back and then 10x it. The people who may have the money or have access to that money but don't have a string of ideas that they never followed through with, half-baked ideas that they started but then put it on the shelf because they lost motivation, right? Well, they're not going to make that financial investment because they have a track record, which is the opposite of yours, which is, I seem to start everything and then not finish. I seem to stack L's over W's. And so do I really want to lose 100 grand because I know who I am? I'm going to give up early. So to those people, I say, go stack wins first. And it doesn't have to be in business. Like if someone wants to coach with you and they're like, well, I've got the means, my family, my husband and I, we do well, but I've got this track record of losing because I don't finish things. So what do I do to start stacking wins? Well, if you have a few pounds to lose, go lose the weight. If you want to start waking up early and doing a cold bath or meditation or sound bowls, start doing that. Like make the investment. The brain doesn't know whether it's a money goal or a fitness goal or a spiritual goal. Set a goal, accomplish it. If you want to read 10 pages a day in a book, start reading 10 pages a day. You do it long enough and you go, man, I stacked all these wins, right? And then you go, you know what? I feel so much confidence. I'm going to invest in Moira and I'm going to know that I'm going to follow through, because whether it's business, relationship, health, fitness, spiritual, whatever, you stack the W's in one area. This is why we always say how you do anything is how you do everything. You stack W's in this area, it's going to benefit you in that area. I have yet to see someone who's got a messy car, a disheveled physique where they look like a pumpkin or a pear. Their diet is horrible, but somehow they maintain a great relationship with their spouse. That doesn't happen. Those dots don't connect. No. It's like I can see a messy car, disheveled physique, disheveled mindset, and I go, you're married? I bet you your marriage is on the rocks right now. Because again, you carry that energy into every area. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the winners you can almost sense a winner. You could smell a winner, and you know that because there's a real confidence about them that is undeniable versus some kind of a swagger where they can't make eye contact. They don't know how to shake hands. They always look kind of over your shoulder because they can't connect here. Whereas you see someone who's a winner, and they've probably also experienced things in their life. I think the formula for most successful people is that you believe you're better than everybody else. You have a high level of insecurity. Also at the same time, right? So you have this like crippling insecurity about yourself, but you believe you're better than everyone else. And then, and then you have impulse control.
Yeah.
Those are the three, like a study came out and said the highest achievers in life truly believe they're better than everyone else. And I know I feel that way. I feel like I'm not in an arrogant way, but I just believe in what I do, I'm better than everyone else. Yet I have this crippling insecurity. I'm this immigrant, crazy? I'm this foreigner, and I'm always fighting against the internal blue collar foreigner who'd never fit in, you know?
Yeah.
And then, but I've got impulse control like a motherfucker. Like you can put I love pretzels. You can put pretzels all around me and then I will get the work done before I reward myself with the pretzels.
Right.
You know, and that is the formula for successful people. And it doesn't matter male, female, wherever you come from. And then you add to that, you've dealt with adversity. Yeah. You've experienced shit, whether it's, drug addiction, or in my case, being an immigrant to this country. And even in Armenia, what we didn't talk about is people always go, well, you got fortunate you were brought to a great country like this. Yes, I did. But in Armenia, I was molested by 2 older boys over and over again between the ages of 4 and 6 for 2 years straight. And I don't even want to go into the details of the level of trauma and damage that does to you, how you feel broken, shameful, unlovable, and you carry this shame, rage, and confusion that I carried with me for so long, all the way to the age of 38 when I had this massive panic attack 11 years ago, that it was so crippling I thought it was a heart attack. But I realize now that's a superpower. The reason I can serve men so well is because I've healed myself. Yeah. For a young man to get molested by 2 older boys, when I talked to my therapist, Kevin, about this for the first time, and I was so reluctant to bring it up. I never brought it up to anyone. And I talked to him about it. He's like, man, I'm so sorry that happened, because those boys are supposed to serve as a rite of passage. Like your older brother, your older friends, your dad, they serve as a rite of passage for a young man into manhood. This is why knights have squires, right? The knight's job is to turn that squire into a capable, confident man. And he says those boys, older boys who did that to you, really betrayed that within you. And I grew up without having trust or loyalty towards other men, because I figured they're all going to backstab me. Yeah. So any kind of business partnership that I had with other men all fell apart. Yeah. It was all just destructive and fell apart. And I always blamed them. It was their fault, right? But in reality, I was just fists up, metaphorically trying to defend myself, protect myself. After working with Kevin, I realized I can talk about this on stage. I realized that what happened to me was an isolated situation. And as Kevin said, he said, it's not a mountain on your timeline of life. It's just a speed bump. Yeah. It's an isolated event that happened, and shame on them for doing that. You could either carry the shame, rage, or confusion, or you can go out there and heal and serve. And again, it's the most selfish thing I do, is to go out there and heal and serve other men that have dealt with either physical, mental, emotional, sexual trauma, because it's such an underserved market. Like most men are not. I went to a physical to a psychologist, Kevin Downing, because of my anxiety attack that I had. I didn't realize it was connected to that. I thought I was just overworked and trying to, I was in the build phase of Fit Body Boot Camp, and I had this panic attack, and I went to the doctor thinking it was a heart attack. He says, no, it's not a heart attack, it's an anxiety attack. He put me on Xanax for like a week, and I realized I had no motivation or any kind of drive to work on Xanax. I just wanted to like sit there like a bump on a log. So I called him up. I'm like, hey doc, like I can't take this stuff. Like this is not me. It makes me numb. He says, well, have you tried talk therapy? I'm like, isn't that for broken people, right? He goes, no. People. He goes, talk therapy can actually, a therapist could give you tools, man. He can give you tools to cope with your stress and your anxiety. And so I went to talk to my therapist about coping with my stress and anxiety in business. In 4 sessions, he was so good at building a relationship and making me feel heard and understood that on that 4th session, he asked, is there anything else I can help you in your life with? And I was like, well, something happened to me as a kid. And that's when the real healing started. And that's the listening to the whisper, taking action, doing all those things we talked about. Bingo. Bingo. It goes right back to everything here. It's the whispers. The shouts were, oh, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, trying to build a company, have competitors. The whisper was, there's this burden that I'm carrying, and I feel shameful about it. And in those moments when you hear that whisper,
your brain's saying like, don't share this, don't share this, don't go there.
Yeah, put it in
like,
a box,
don't
put it
take
away.
that action, don't do that thing.
Yeah.
But that whisper, it's like, it's the secret to just unlocking so much.
Isn't it true? It's just constantly leaning into the discomfort. And it's so safe, and we think it's safe to just stay in the middle of our comfort zone.
Right.
Really, we have to lean into those walls of the comfort. Listen to the whispers. Take action. It's going to be imperfect action. It's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
I remember working with Kevin for 15 months. He told me in 4 weeks, 5 weeks max, I'll give you tools to deal with your anxiety. But then week number 4, I throw that nugget out about what happened to me as a kid. I spent 15 months on his couch. Some days I would leave his office and I would feel like I'm walking through molasses. My legs felt like they were in molasses and my brain felt like it was in a fog because we unearthed so much shit.
Harder before it gets easier.
Right?
That's for sure.
And I think that's why we ignore the whisper.
Right.
Because
I
think intuitively we know, like, if I allow this whisper to come out and actually try doing something about it, it is going to get harder.
Right.
Think about if someone's in a bad relationship.
Right.
It is easier to stay in it than go, gosh, we got to change bank accounts. I got to get a new address.
But it's that long run thing. Like you and I would rather rip the Band-Aid, right?
Yes.
I can remember the first time Brian and I ever went to therapy years ago. Was somebody said to me, a friend of mine that's a therapist, said, listen, you can go now when things are just not so great. You know, we had little kids, that phase of life, we're toddlers, like life is hard. And she said, or you can wait. Like you can give it 10 years, give it 15 years. She's like, you're going to have so much shit to deal with, you might not make it out.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, okay, we'll go.
Here we go.
You know?
Yeah. And I know what people are going to say, and I think we need to address this because, I just talked about all my clients, and myself included, we're high speed, tightly wound, type A, purpose driven. So it's, of course, it's easy for Moira to take action. It's easy for Bedros to take action. You guys are wired that way. You went and bought candies and then upcharged the neighborhood kids, and you just naturally knew. You laid them out perfectly. You probably had a pitch. You probably knew how to draw people in and sell your stuff. You probably had yes, that was factory installed. But guess what? As I was building Fit Body Bootcamp and having explained who I am and where I come from a communist household where my dad, I love him to pieces, but his way of discipline, he called it the 5 brothers, which was the backhand, right? I was supposed to be seen and not heard. So now imagine you're trying to build a multi-million-dollar company, but you don't feel like you have the right to speak, to exercise your voice, to ask for what you want from your team, right? And so I was a very passive-aggressive leader. I didn't communicate well. I didn't set expectations. I didn't set deadlines. And then I would get frustrated when my team couldn't magically read my mind. Right. And then I'd blow up at them, right? And the cycle would continue. And I found that same cycle in my marriage. I found that same cycle in my friendships. So, but all that to say that I wasn't a factory installed leader. So anyone watching or listening to this saying, well, Moira leans into action, you lean into action, you guys are factory installed this. I was not a factory installed leader. Right. Yet I knew that it is a skill that I can develop. Yeah. And how you are and how I am is a trait and a skill that people can develop. If you just start stacking W's, if you just keep promises to yourself, over time you become a promise keeper. If you keep breaking promises, you become a promise breaker. And so the human body and mind is so pliable, we become the things we do the most. And so while, I believe Jocko Willink was probably born as a great leader. Like he goes, since I was a baby, I remember wanting to be a commando and leading a group of men into war. I didn't. I didn't either. Especially when you're the baby of the family. Right. You don't feel that way. Exactly. Yeah. I wish I could say that I wanted to, I felt like I wanted to be a leader and build a company, and I didn't. Well, I was so broke being in this country. I was so tired of seeing my family using food stamps, and we were getting laughed at. And then I had in elementary school, God, I hated this, the lunch card. I had the fucking lunch card. That means you're the broke kid, and you go in why they had another separate line for kids with awful. It's like the scarlet letter as a loser, right? Like all the kids would laugh at you, you have a lunch card. Your parents can't even afford 75 cents for lunch, right? And I remember thinking, like, I want to be so rich that I never have to worry about money again. Like that was my let it drive you. Yeah, it was my driver. And then I realized, okay, being rich means you got to have employees. To have employees, you got to know how to lead, communicate, manage, set expectations. And so I spent the better part of a decade building those muscles. And so anyone that thinks that they can't build the ability to take action, to be a great leader, to be a great orator. Let's not forget, English is a second language for me. And the Anaheim Union High School District deduced that I have ADD and OCD and learning disabilities. They literally put me in the classes with the, not only ESL, English as a second language, but in the classes with disabled kids because I would write numbers and letters backwards. Yet, one of the greatest compliments I've gotten was from Ed Milet when he said, dude, you are one of the greatest speakers of our time, right? And I'm like, well, shoot, I had to learn the English language, overcome my learning disabilities, and then be able to string words together and paint this beautiful word picture that can move people to action. And so if anyone thinks that these skills and traits are not buildable, they absolutely are. Do they take work and effort? Absolutely. Are you willing to do it? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And such a great place to wrap up. It's just because, again, it goes back to where we started. It's the story you're telling yourself, right? It's like, are you stuck in the comparison game? Well, you guys can do that, but I can't because of this. It's like, well, then that's your reality. Like, whatever your story is your reality. I always tell people, that are my coaching clients that are working on goals or whatever, I'm like, okay, so we've got the battle plan, like we've got the action plan, you know exactly what to do. What do you feel like it's going to happen? And they're like, oh, I'm like, oh shit, it's not.
Right.
Like,
right.
I'm literally like, I don't care what you do. Now it's not going to happen because it's your belief.
Yeah.
Like you have to build that belief in where you're going because once you have the belief, then you're focused on the opportunity. You're focused on the actions. You're focused on why you're going to succeed versus why you're going to fail. Yeah. It's the biggest differentiator.
Oh, that is so powerful. It's funny. We started off with story and belief. And we're ending with story and belief. I hope the viewers, the listeners are realizing this was not by accident.
No.
It came full circle because that is what matters. Your story determines your belief system. Your belief system shapes your identity.
Absolutely.
And then once you decide that this is my identity, I'm supposed to be rich and famous or broke and stressed and anxious, you end up looking for evidence in life to prove that. Right? And we'll always find what we're looking for.
Absolutely.
What a great way to end. Wow.
What a great
Thank you for the opportunity, by the way, to let me share with your audience. I think now we're both primed for a great half-day coaching session for you.
Yes, I am excited. Well, Bedros, thank you so much. This has been a treat. And thank you, listeners. Make sure you tag Bedros in this episode, tag me in this episode, share with your friends, and we will see you next week.